Monopolistic competition and oligopoly. So today we'll talk about monopolistic competition, then we'll talk about oligopoly. The laundry detergent market is one that is characterized neither as perfect competition nor monopoly. So monopolistic competition, imperfectly competitive. Firms and organizations that fall between the extremes of monopoly and perfect competition. Monopolistic competition, you've got many firms competing to sell similar but differentiated products. Now, an oligopoly is a few large firms have all or most of the sales in an industry. A good example of oligopoly is the oil cartel is a perfect example of oligopolist. Differentiated product, a product that consumers perceive as distinctive in the same way. Ways for a product to be differentiated, the physical aspects, the location from which it sells, a purse at Target versus a purse at um, uh, Louis Vuitton. That could be a differentiation. Intangible aspects and perceptions. Of course, if you follow fashion in this country, perception is a tremendous amount of it. The demand curve faced by a perfectly competitive firm is perfectly elastic. Remember, because the in the perfectly competitive market, they're the price taker. They have to accept whatever price is on the market, and they can't change it. It can sell all the output it wishes at the prevailing market price. So you can see the curve for a monopoly price. A monopolistically competitive is not as flat as your perfect, but not as steep as your monopoly. The demand curve faced by a monopoly is the market demand. It can sell more output only by decreasing the price it charges. The demand curve faced by the monopolistically competitive firm falls in between, as we see in example C. The monopolistically competitive firm decides on its profit maximizing quantity and price in which the same way as the monopolist. A monopolistic competitor, like a monopolist, faces a downward sloping demand. It will choose some combination of price and quantity along its perceived demand curve. So here is an example. The profit maximization point for a firm in a monopolistically competitor is where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. In this case, it's a quantity of 40, a price of $16. If one monopolist competitor earns positive economic profits, other firms will be tempted to enter the market. The entry of other firms into the same general market shifts the demand curve that a monopolistically competitive firm faces. So here we go. At P0, Q0, the monopolistically competitive firm shown in the figure is making a positive economic profit. It's clear because if you follow the dotted line from Q0, you can see that price is above average cost, which is what we want. Positive economics is being had, and it attracts competing firms in the industry, driving the demand down to D1. At the new equilibrium point, P1, Q1, the original firm is earning zero maximum profits and entry to the industry ceases. So anytime there's no profit motive left, rarely are you going to see firms entering into the market. In B, the opposite occurs. At point PO, the firm is losing money. If you follow the dotted line above QO, you see that average cost is greater than price. So losses induces firm to leave the industry. When they do, demand for the original firm arises to D1, where once again the firm is earning zero economic profits. The long result of entry and exit in a perfectly competitive market, firms sell at the price level determined by the lowest point on the average cost curve, which we covered when we talked about perfectly competitive firms. Displays productive efficiency. Goods are produced at the lowest possible average cost. However, in monopolistic competition, the end result of entry and exit, firms end up with a price that lies on the downward sloping portion of the average cost curve, not at the bottom. Thus, monopolistic competition will not be productively efficient. An oligopoly when a small number of large firms have all or most of the sales in the industry. If oligopolists compete hard, they act similarly to the perfectly competitors, driving down costs, leading to zero profits for all. If oligopolists collude with each other, they may act like a monopoly and succeed in pushing up prices and earning consistently high levels of profit. What is collusion? Collusion is when firms act together to reduce output and keep prices high. How do they do it? By holding down output, charging higher prices, dividing the profit among themselves. A cartel is a group or firm that have a formal agreement to collude to produce the monopoly output and sell it at a monopoly price. So, a great example is the oil cartel of the 1970s that colluded together to keep production low, prices high. They colluded with each other, worked with each other, and that had a devastating effect on folks that had to consume oil, especially here in the US in the 70s. I wanted to introduce you to the prisoner's dilemma or game theory. It's a branch of mathematics that analyzes a situation in which players must make decisions and then receive payoffs based on what others decide to do. In economics, we came up with what we call the prisoner's dilemma. Now you'll understand why when we watch those police shows or detective shows on TV, that two perpetrators are not in the room at the same time. The two perpetrators are one is in one room being interrogated, another is in another room being interrogated. You'll understand that why by understanding the prisoner's dilemma, a scenario in which the gains from cooperation are larger than the rewards for pursuing self-interest. So say you had two prisoners. They just got caught for robbing a bank, prisoner A, prisoner B. So if prisoner A could either remain silent or confess, prisoner B either can remain silent or confess. So if they both remain silent, they get 2 years. A gets 2 years, B gets 2 years. If A confesses and prisoner B stays quiet, A gets only 1 year and B gets 8 years. If A remains silent and B confesses, then vice versa. A gets 8 years, B gets 1 year. And if they both confess, then they both get 5 years. Duopoly, an oligopoly with two firms, do the same thing. Either hold down output or increase output. So you can look at firm A and B, look at the prisoner's dilemma, and you can see the output. If they both hold down output, you get $1,000. But if they don't, if one increases output and the other one doesn't, you can see the difference there. If they both increase, they get 400. So That's the challenge with the prisoner's dilemma. The way out of the prisoner's dilemma is to find a way to penalize those who do not cooperate. Oligopolists may choose to act in a way that generates pressure on each firm to stick to its agreed quantity of output. The kinked demand curve is a perceived demand curve that arises when competing oligopoly firms commit to mass price cuts but not price increases. This is an example of a kinked demand curve. I just wanted you to see it. And that's it. I wanted you to have a rudimentary understanding of what is monopolistic competition, what is oligopoly, what's the profit maximizing point, what is prisoner's dilemma, and how is it used when cartels or oligopoly firms collude together. Thank you.